So I'm Peggy Ray, and you may have seen my name on lots of Network for Peace publications because for the last 20 years I've been associated with the newsletter. And I've been actually connected to the project for almost back to the beginning. So I've been invited to say a few words about the history of the Network for Peace through dialogue. And I just have been racking, you've got these little cards on your way in, and each one of these years with a single line about the project of that year or several years, there's a whole story behind each one of those lines. So 30 years of those, it was kind of daunting to try to think how to frame all of that. So I just decided that what I would do is tell you what's been the most significant for me, and then after I've spoken a bit, I'm going to ask you if anyone here feels moved to speak, if you would like to share something that's been important for you or meaningful for you about this organization. So, first of all, I've always been intrigued by the creation story of the Network for Peace. So it was originally called Center of International Learning, because that was its name for actually 20 years. And it came about because a German sociologist named Uta Bonnet was in New York City, and Kathleen at that time was a founding member of an organization called Intercommunity Center for Justice and Peace, which was a number of different religious congregations who had come together. And as I know the story, you can ask, when Kathleen writes her memoir, you'll know the whole thing. So Kathleen was in her office, and Uta Bonnet showed up and wanted to know how you would go about creating such an organization, because she wanted to do it in Germany. So she came to consult with Kathleen, who she'd heard about through various Catholic sources. So Kathleen was intrigued and got involved with Uta and some other people, particularly from the Philippines, who were creating this project with the international grassroots people internationally together to consider critical issues of the time. So the first one was in 1988, and it was about the U.S. bases, it says in the homeland, but that meant in the Philippines. And I just looked up, I Googled this today, I find out that there are 140 U.S. bases, 800 bases around the world, U.S. bases around the world in 70 countries. So Kathleen was looking at this, how this was working out in the Philippines. Now one thing that shook her to the core, and I think we still felt reverberations of that in recent years, was she found the young Philippine women in brothels around the U.S. naval bases serving the sexual needs of the sailors there. That was one of the things that made a lasting impression. And she met a man there named Ed Gerlach, and Ed ran a center for elders, or a program for elders, who were living in shacks in shantytown, crowded into a little shantytown there in Manila. And he also had was working with street children, and that I think those were also some things, as I know, but you have to wait for her memoir, that were particularly impressed Kathleen. Another kind of like home base for the Network for CIL at that time was the Church of All Saints in Harlem. And my first contact, actually, was when Ginny invited me to the Church of All Saints to hear a choir from Kumasi, Ghana, come and sing there. And so I went to that, and there was beautiful costumes and some crafts that people had brought to sell from Ghana to try to pay their way to the United States. I was very charmed by that. And also at the time, the CIL had a program called Communities in Dialogue. So there were actually people in All Saints Church who were corresponding with a parish in Ghana by mail. This was all like before, if you can imagine the time, before the internet. They actually communicated by mail. letters and pictures and whatever. Also at All Saints, for the first years, there were annual fundraisers in the church there, and I can remember donating some beautiful, actually, Waterford crystal glasses that I had gotten as a wedding present and never really used or really liked very much. And I donated them for the silent auction. Somebody there liked them and paid like, I don't know, $5 for them or something. But, you know, the people from All Saints who helped to organize those early fundraisers continued to do that when the venue for the fundraisers moved up here to Marymount School. And so some of them are in the room today. One of them is Muriel Young-Williams. She and Dorothy right back there. I don't think Dorothy McWhite is here, but she was another one. You would have seen them organizing the silent auction tables every single year, year after year after year. And so they've been very faithful supporters of this organization for many, many, many years. And other members of All Saints Church as well. I think maybe partly because of this being an African American community at All Saints Church, somehow Africa got into the genome of the Network for Peace Through Dialogue. So there have been numerous contacts with people from Africa over the years. I remember when the thing in Rwanda was happening and there were Hutus coming into the Congo. We actually had somebody from the Congo who had lived in the Congo was able to come and tell us a little bit about what was going on there. So there have been different over the years, many different connections with Africa. Virginia, excuse me, I don't want to be too familiar, went to Zimbabwe at one point and made the connections there. And there was some correspondence back and forth by mail between women from a singles club in Harare with CIL. And there were also many people from the Philippines who came over the years. And most recently, someone came to talk to us about what they were doing, what her organization was doing to prevent human trafficking in the Philippines. And then even more recently than that, someone who came to talk about how climate change was affecting the island countries of the Philippines, the rising seas, the terrible typhoons, and all of that. So this concept of the mission statement of bringing groups together, originally the CIL concept was to do this internationally. You would have the communities in dialogue, and you would have these workshops where people from different countries would come. So actually, Virginia and Kathleen were able to organize this fabulous workshop in 2002 called Neighborhood by Neighborhood, How Do You Build a Sustainable World? And they managed to bring, this was astonishing when you think about it, and maybe some people here in this room helped to finance it, because I'm sure it was quite a feat, to bring 2 people from Zimbabwe and 2 people from the Philippines here for this workshop. And so our friends from Germany also came. And then, of course, there were people from New York, and our friend there was a CIL West at the time, even, came, Tom Newton. So they did have this international quality, which for me was so important. And I was able, another feat, actually, CIL managed to send me and Helen Corby to Ghana. We went for this incredible 3-week workshop. It was called What Do People Need? And it was bringing people together from affluent Western countries into a place where people were living at the subsistence level. And that was very, very instructive for me. And I remember I went and visited a farming village, and the women would go to a river quite a good walk away and get water and bring it back on their heads. And so I was invited to come and try this out. you can imagine I did not get more than a few steps with the water on my head. But we also learned that, in the school, that children not only did not have paper and books, but they carried their own chair to school. So it was very instructive for us to see what some of the needs of the people in the rural areas of Ghana needed, and to have a frame of reference for what we have here. So that was important to me, and many things. One of the women from CIL West, Connie Newton, when she was in New York here, she met in Harlem. She met some grandmothers who were caring for their grandchildren. And she and Helen Corby then attended a conference in Denver on grandmothers caring for their grandchildren. And it turned out that across the country there were 4 million grandmothers taking care of their grandchildren. And Connie actually interviewed some of them and made a nice little documentary about a tribute to the grandmothers taking care of their grandchildren. And this video is now being digitized and it's going to appear on our website. So, I don't know, there's many, if I should say more, but those were some things that were very important to me. I remain interested in, I want to say, at this workshop, the 7-day international workshop on sustainability, where the people from the Zimbabwe came, the people from the Philippines came. Afterwards, Kathleen went back to the Philippines, and she was very impressed by the program for street children. The street children were actually, some of the street children were being trained to teach other street children. They were called junior educators. And all of them, in fact, I think I read somewhere that every child in the Philippines was introduced to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So Kathleen came back and she thought that our children should know about the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So she did a whole program, a whole curriculum, and got some groups. I think there was some from Africa, and I don't know, maybe you'll have to ask her about that too, but there were some international groups of young people, as well as a couple here in the United States, who used this curriculum on the rights of the child.
By email.
We're up to
Email.
Yeah, okay, we're up to 2002 or 3 right now, we got email. But not all the people that we wanted to correspond with by email had the technology to do it, so that was kind of a handicap back then. But then she went on to do some more work with young people in Harlem. And I think you spent about 5 years doing that work with young people. That was kind of a core thing for you at that time. And Virginia was not wasting her time while Kathleen was doing that. She organized 2 major national conferences on dialogue. People came from all over the country who were interested in dialogue processes. And that they were very, very amazing conventions that she organized. And so then, I guess to this day, I mean, one of my passions right now is on what's going on the planet in terms of climate change and environmental degradation and species loss and all those things you could cry about all day long. And so we've still been looking at that for the last couple of years. And it goes back, I was astonished when I did the last newsletter. It was the last newsletter, ever. The last newsletter ever. And I went back to the first year, in 1996, was the first year of the newsletters. And what was there but an article about sustainability, written by Connie Newton from our CIL West. And so it's been, sort of, we haven't been looking at it head on all the time, but it's been there in our awareness, like from the beginning. And it still is, and we haven't finished talking about it. So anyway, that's what we've been doing lately. So those are here's some things that have been, to sum up, especially meaningful for me. I got to meet Virginia and Kathleen and to work with them all these years. A great blessing. I got to meet wonderful people from around the world and make trips actually that I never would have gotten to make otherwise to Germany and to Ghana and yeah, basically that was where. And to meet these people from around the world that have been part of the web that Virginia and Kathleen have woven. And all of us are in that web too. So to meet many wonderful people. And finally, I'm a very shy person, and when I first started going to these groups, I could hardly speak. I didn't, I wasn't able to voice my thoughts very well. Now, when I go to a staff meeting, you can hardly shut me up. But I am done now. But
there's one last thing that the Network for Peace is leaving us, and these are the little handy little cards of dialogue practices. And I hope that you got one when you came in. And I'm going to, if there are 6 people who have it in their hands, because I would like to, when we start any dialogue, we start out by reading these 6 points. People take turns reading them, and so if they feel moved to do it. So if there are 5 to 6 people who would, one at a time, read these dialogue practices. Somebody want to read the first one? Yes.
Listen for understanding. Listen with equal respect for each person present.
Next. Yes.
Speak from your heart as well as your mind. Speak only when you are sincerely moved to make an honest contribution from your own experience.
Next.
Suspend judgment. Let go of any need to be right or have a right answer. Try to suspend certainty.
Next one. Yes.
Hold space for differences. Embrace all points of view. Change the buts to and.
2 more. Yes.
Remain open to all outcomes.
Yes.
Slow down. Let there be spaces. Silence in the dialogue.
Okay. Now, we have these in mind, but we realize that we're still practicing and that it's not always an easy thing to hold space for differences, suspend judgment, and all those good things. But, yes, that's it.